Hey guys, welcome to lesson on chapter 7, lesson 5, part 2. This lesson is going to basically be a continuation of what I covered in the first lesson. So it's going to be over on what all the various organelles are and what they do. So, back to this picture right here. And as before, guys, I have included a quick little review on what all the parts are. So if you forget from the video or you need to use this for your slide, here's a little assistance you can use. Now, the first structure I'm going to talk about today is something called the vacuole. The vacuole can be seen right here. It's a very large pocket of something that you can see. Now, one thing before I talk about what the vacuole does is that you'll probably notice there are no vacuoles in the animal cell or the prokaryotic cell, but there are some vacuoles in the plant cell. This is an important thing to understand about the vacuole. Vacuoles are only found in plant cells, with some few rare exceptions. Some animal cells do have them, but they're found mostly in plant cells. And vacuoles basically have one job. And you can probably guess that if you think about it a little critically about. See how big it is right there. It's a storage container, period. It stores stuff. So if you're part of a cell that's making sugar from it's making sugars via photosynthesis, you're going to want to store those sugars somewhere to be used later. And that's what the vacuole is for. And that's really all it is. It's a storage box. It's a box that stores things. The second thing I want to point out is called the lysome. The lysome can be seen right here, and it's an extremely small structure, but what its job is it basically breaks down wastes. It has a bunch of enzymes in there that are very good at destroying things. And the cell will put things it doesn't want anymore into the lysome, and the lysome is going to break it down into its smaller parts. So it'll either become waste to be removed later on, or it'll be able to be recycled and be used again later. Now, the lysome also has one other goal, but only in certain types of cells. Whenever one of your white blood cells, the cells that kill bacteria and other things, catches a bacteria, it puts them into a lysome and essentially shoots them full of enzymes that basically blows up the bacteria. So the lysome has that other goal as well, is that it's meant to basically destroy things inside the cell. He's kind of the destroyer of the cell. The next idea that covered here is called the centriole. The centriole can be seen right here, and it has one goal that we know about so far. I have heard some information about some other possible uses that are not covered in this book, but for the book's sake and for what we know about centrioles so far, they have one job, and that is to help the cell reproduce. These guys basically, what they're going to do is they're going to line up on different sides of the cell, and they're quite literally going to pull the cell apart and to create two new cells by pulling it apart after everything in here has been duplicated. And the centriole's one job is to basically pull the cell apart so it can reproduce and make a brand new cell of itself. And that's its job. The next organelle I'm talking about is called the mitochondria. The mitochondria is probably one of the most interesting organelles inside of the body. What the mitochondria does is that the mitochondria is your cell's power plant. It's gonna make energy. Its one job is to take sugar and to turn it into ATP. Now, we haven't talked about ATP yet, but ATP is basically your cell's petrol. It's how your cell runs itself. And mitochondria's one job is to take sugar and to turn it into ATP. So it basically makes gas, it makes petrol. That's all it does. Now, as a little side note, and you won't get this from your teacher out there, is that the mitochondria is also probably what causes aging. One thing we've learned, when people get older, the mitochondria slowly begin to break down. And kind of like with your car and burning petrol, the mitochondria also releases pollution into the cell as well. And this pollution, released by the mitochondria, over time damages cells and causes them to become slower and slower and slower until the cell dies. Does that sound familiar? It's like aging. Aging is very similar. As you slowly get slower and slower, your body has a harder time doing things. And we think a large portion of why that is because of the mitochondria. If you want to know more about that, feel free to come ask me, because this is actually my area of specialization. I know quite a bit about mitochondria and their relationship to aging. It's definitely my favorite area of biology. Now, the next organelle I want to cover is something called a chloroplast. The chloroplast only occurs in plant cells. It has one job. It takes sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and turns it into sugar. It basically makes all the sugars in the world that you're ever going to eat come from chloroplasts. And frankly, this is the most important organelle in probably all of biology, because without chloroplasts, nothing else could survive. Because whenever you eat a French fry, whenever you eat anything, you can trace all food on Earth back to the sugar that's made by chloroplasts. And chloroplasts, that's all they're in. They are the photosynthetic part of the plant cell. They're the part that takes sunlight, and they can turn that sunlight into sugar, which sugar can be used for energy, which you already know is used by the mitochondria to do other things. There's three more structures I want to talk about. The next one's called the cell wall. Now, the cell wall is in plant cells. Now, you might sit there and see there's two cell walls here, one in the prokaryote and one in the plant cell. There is no cell wall in an animal cell. It just has this plasma membrane. Now, there are plasma membranes in the plant cell. You can see it right along here and inside the bacteria as well. But these guys also have an extra thing called the cell wall. The cell wall in plants is made of cellulose. Cellulose is a very strong material. It's very hard to bend and break. It's the reason why plants can grow as big as they can, is because cell walls give them the rigidity that they need to grow and have that strength. Consequently, cellulose, which is part of cell walls, is also really hard for your body to digest. If you were to eat cellulose just by itself, you would die, because your body can't do anything with cellulose. Some animals can. Deer can eat cellulose. Cows can eat cellulose, but humans can't. We don't have the four-chambered, that means there's four parts, the four-chambered stomach that lets us digest cellulose. So if you're feeling a little bit down and you want to be able to eat cellulose, then you're going to have to get four stomachs and burp methane, which sucks, trust me. So you don't really want, so cellulose is one of those things that only certain animals and bacteria can do it, and we are not one of them. Inside of a bacteria, the cell wall is a little bit different. It's called a peptidoglycan layer. You don't have to know much about the peptidoglycan layer, other than most antibiotics that we deal with will target this layer right here and cause the cell to explode. Kind of creepy, but cool. Okay, now the last idea that's covered about in this chapter is two more cell walls, but I think it's best to show you the pictures I have of these here rather than show you on the slide I have above. The first one's called the cilium, or also called the cilia. Cilium is cilia plural. So what cilia are these little hair-like projections, you can see it right here, on the cell wall that basically let the cell move around. That's their one job. They help the cell move. And a lot of cells have these small little cilia on them that allow them to move around and do cool stuff like that. The second kind of organelle that some cells have, it's important to understand not all cells have these two structures. It's called a flagella. A flagella is this long whip-like structure on these bacteria right here. And what they do is they basically act like a tail that whips around, that makes a little whipping motion, and this whipping motion basically gives the cell the ability to move. So both the cilium and the flagella basically act as movers. They help the cell move around when they need to get from one spot to the next spot. And that's all they really are. So I'm done talking about this, guys. You already kind of know what to do. This is a continuation of the activity from yesterday. I want you to go online and add the organelles we covered today into your CMAP. So everything we talked about today, I want you to put into CMAP. And today, though, you're going to have to do something a little bit different. Once you've saved your CMAP, you want to post it onto Evernote. Now, you probably don't know how to do that. So here's how. What you can do is you log into you get into CMAP, you get your cell concept map there. You click on File, you click Export CMAP As, you then click on where it says Image File, and this will let you create a picture of your concept map. You just take that picture, you post that picture onto Evernote, and bam, you're done. And that will be my way of knowing you got the work taken care of. All right, guys, that's it for this lesson. Thank you for paying attention. And when you're finished with this activity, feel free to move on to the next one.